The marble floor was cold beneath my knees. Even through the thick cotton of my uniform, I scrubbed in small, methodical circles, watching the soap suds swirl and disappear into the grain of the stone, my reflection distorted in its polished surface. The mansion was silent at this hour, that heavy, expensive kind of silence that only existed in houses too large for the people living in them. My back ached. It always did by Thursday afternoons, after 3 days of climbing stairs, reaching into corners, making invisible the evidence that anyone lived here at all. But I needed this job, desperately. The kind of desperate that makes you swallow your pride, ignore the burning in your shoulders, and smile at people who look through you like you're made of glass. I wrung out my cloth and sat back on my heels, pressing my fingers into the small of my spine. Through the tall windows, I could see the manicured gardens stretching out toward the gates that required a code, a scan, and probably a blood oath to open. Everything here was controlled, monitored, safe for the people who mattered. I wasn't one of those people. The other maids had warned me about this place when I'd started 2 months ago. Don't ask questions. Don't look too long. Don't be anywhere you're not supposed to be. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, had been especially clear. Mr. Salvatore doesn't like disruptions. You do your work. You stay quiet. You go home. I'd seen him exactly twice, both times from a distance, a tall figure in a dark suit, flanked by men who wore their danger like cologne. He moved through his own home like a storm passing through, brief and absolute. I'd pressed myself against walls, made myself smaller, invisible. That was the trick to surviving in places like this. Become nothing. The clock in the hallway chimed 3. I gathered my supplies and stood, my knees protesting. I had 1 more floor to finish before I could leave, before I could take the 2 buses back to my cramped apartment and collapse into bed. Tomorrow I'd do it all again. As I climbed the back staircase, the one the staff used, the one tucked away from the main house, I heard it. Music. Faint, tinny, coming from somewhere above. My steps slowed. This floor was supposed to be empty. Mrs. Chen had said the family wing was off limits this week. I should have turned around, should have gone back downstairs and minded my business. But the music was wrong. Not wrong in melody, but wrong in context. It was a children's song, something bright and cheerful, echoing through these cold, adult halls. My curiosity, that stupid, dangerous thing, pulled me forward. The door at the end of the hallway was cracked open, warm light spilling through the gap. I approached slowly, my cleaning caddy suddenly feeling loud, every item rattling like an alarm. Through the opening, I could see a bedroom. Not just any bedroom. A little girl's room, all soft pinks and whites, stuffed animals lined up on shelves, a canopy bed with gauze curtains, and in a wheelchair by the window sat a child. She couldn't have been more than 7. Dark curls framing a face so pale it seemed translucent. Her hands lay motionless in her lap, her head tilted at an angle that suggested someone had positioned it there. She stared out the window with eyes that held an awareness too heavy for someone so small. The music came from a tablet propped on a nearby table, playing the same song on repeat. Some animated characters danced across the screen, their movements jerky with the loop. My chest constricted. I'd cleaned this entire house for 2 months and never knew she existed. A child. A lonely child in a wheelchair, left alone with a tablet for company. Before I could think better of it, I pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. "Hi there," I said softly. She didn't turn. Didn't react at all. I moved into her line of sight, and finally, those dark eyes shifted to me. They were beautiful eyes, I realized. Deep brown, almost black, with long lashes. Her father's eyes, though I'd never been close enough to him to really see. "I'm Elena," I introduced myself, setting down my caddy. "I work here. I clean the house." Nothing. Not even a blink of acknowledgement, but something in her gaze changed, sharpened. She was listening. I glanced at the tablet, at the same cheerful song starting over again. "Are you tired of that song? I bet you are." I'd be going crazy. I reached over and paused it, and in the sudden silence, I could hear my own heartbeat. The little girl's eyes tracked my movement. There was intelligence there, trapped behind whatever had taken her mobility, her voice. "Do you like to dance?" I asked, then immediately felt stupid. Of course she couldn't dance, but her eyes did something. Widened, just slightly. Interest, maybe. Or memory. An idea formed, reckless and completely inappropriate for someone who needed to keep this job. But looking at this child, at the loneliness radiating from her like cold from ice, I couldn't stop myself. I used to dance, I told her, moving to the center of the room. Before everything got complicated. My mama taught me. She said dancing was the only time we were allowed to forget our troubles. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a song I hadn't listened to in months. Something with a rhythm that used to make my body move without thinking. I set it on the dresser, turned up the volume, and as the first notes filled the room, I began to move. It felt awkward at first. I was in my ugly uniform, my hair tied back in a practical bun, my body tired from hours of work, but slowly, muscle memory took over. My hips swayed, my arms lifted, my feet found the rhythm. I wasn't good. I'd never been trained, never had lessons. But I was genuine. I danced the way my mama had taught me, with feeling instead of technique. I danced around the room, making faces, spinning in clumsy pirouettes, exaggerating my movements to make them dramatic and silly. And then I saw it. The corner of the little girl's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. Something that looked like joy trying to break through. Emboldened, I danced closer to her wheelchair, moving my arms in wide, sweeping motions, narrating my movements in a silly voice. And now, the princess twirls through the enchanted forest, where the trees are made of candy and the birds sing opera. Another twitch. Definitely almost a smile. I was laughing now, breathless, moving without thinking about how ridiculous I looked. For a moment, we were just two people in a room, and she wasn't trapped in that chair. And I wasn't a maid who'd probably get fired for this. The music swelled toward its crescendo, and I spun one final time, arms extended, head back, and froze. In the doorway stood a man in a black suit, and even without having seen him up close before, I knew exactly who he was. Domenico Salvatore, the owner of this house, the man whose name the other maids whispered with fear. But it wasn't fear that stopped my breath. It was the way he looked at me. His face was angular, sharp enough to cut, with a jaw that seemed carved from stone and dark eyes that absorbed light rather than reflected it. He was young, mid-30s maybe, but carried himself with the authority of someone who'd never been told no. 3 men flanked him, hands folded in front of them, their expressions carefully blank. But his expression wasn't blank. It was unreadable in a way that made my skin prickle with warning. He stared at me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve, or a threat he was calculating how to eliminate. Time stretched. The music continued playing from my phone, inappropriately cheerful against the sudden tension. My voice came out as a rasp. I cleared my throat, felt heat flooding my cheeks. I'm so sorry, Mr. Salvatore. Your daughter seemed... Valentina, he said, and his voice was nothing like I'd expected. It was quiet, controlled, but it carried. The kind of voice that didn't need volume to command a room. He moved past me without another glance, walking to the wheelchair, with steps that were too measured, too careful. He crouched down in front of the little girl, Valentina, and his entire demeanor shifted. The dangerous edge softened into something else, something that made my chest ache to witness. Gentleness, devotion, fear barely contained. Piccola, he murmured, reaching up to adjust a curl that had fallen across her forehead. Did this woman bother you? He asked it like a genuine question, like her answer mattered, even though we both knew she couldn't give one. But he watched her face with complete attention, reading something in her expression that I couldn't see. Papa, one of the men behind him said quietly, urgently. A warning. Domenico held up one hand, silencing him without turning around. His eyes never left his daughter's face. Did she make you uncomfortable, Valentina? And then, I almost missed it. Valentina's eyes moved, deliberately, from her father's face to mine and back to him. Then her mouth, that mouth that had almost smiled, curved just slightly at one corner. Domenico went completely still. The change was so subtle I might have imagined it. A catch in his breath, a widening of his eyes. He straightened slowly, turned to face me, and the look he gave me was different now, not threatening, not welcoming either. Something else entirely. Hungry. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena Russo, sir." My voice shook despite my efforts to steady it. "How long have you worked here, Elena Russo?" 2 months, sir." And in 2 months, no one thought to mention that I have a daughter who needs companionship?" This he directed over his shoulder at the men in the doorway, and even though his voice remained quiet, they all flinched. "Sir, Mrs. Chen coordinates all the—" one of them started. "I don't care what Mrs. Chen coordinates." Still quiet. Still deadly. "My daughter has been alone in this room, and this girl," he gestured to me without looking, "is the first person in 2 months to notice she's not a piece of furniture." He turned back to me, and I felt pinned by his gaze. "You made her smile." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "She hasn't smiled in 8 months. Not since the accident that put her in that chair." His jaw worked, a muscle twitching beneath the skin. "You made her smile by dancing." "I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't have. Be here tomorrow. Same time." He pulled something from his inner pocket. A business card, I realized. Black with silver lettering. He held it out to me. "Give this to Mrs. Chen. Tell her you're to spend 2 hours with Valentina every afternoon. Your cleaning schedule will be adjusted." I took the card with trembling fingers. Up close, I could smell him. Expensive cologne mixed with something else. Something dark and smoky, like burned wood. Power, I realized stupidly. Power had a smell. "I don't understand," I whispered. "My daughter smiled," he repeated, as if that explained everything. "That means you're valuable, and things that are valuable to me." His eyes traveled over my face, my shoulders, my hands still clutching the card. "I protect them very carefully." It should have sounded reassuring. Instead, it sounded like a threat and a promise wrapped in velvet. One of the men cleared his throat. "Boss, the meeting with the Calabresi family will wait." Domenico reached out. I flinched before I could stop myself, and very gently plucked my phone from where I'd left it on the dresser. He looked at the screen, at the song still playing, and something flickered across his face. Then he handed it back to me, his fingers brushing mine for just a second. That brief touch felt like a brand. "Tomorrow," he said again. 3 o'clock. Don't be late." He turned back to Valentina, pressed a kiss to the top of her head, murmured something in Italian I couldn't catch. Then he walked past me toward the door, his men falling into formation around him. At the threshold he paused, turned his head just slightly, not enough to look at me fully, but enough that I saw his profile, the sharp line of his nose, the dangerous curve of his mouth. "Elena," he said, my name foreign and intimate on his tongue, "if you ever scare my daughter, make her uncomfortable, or give me any reason to doubt your intentions." He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. Then he was gone, and I was alone with Valentina and the echo of a warning that felt less like protection and more like possession. I looked down at the card in my hand. The silver lettering spelled out a phone number, nothing else. On the back, written in sharp, decisive handwriting, for Valentina, personal protection. DS. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. What had I just done? What had I just walked into? Valentina made a small sound. Not quite a laugh, but close. When I met her eyes, they were bright, more alive than they'd been since I'd entered the room. She looked happy, and despite the fear coiling in my stomach, despite the warning bells clanging in my head, despite everything I knew about dangerous men and the people who got too close to them, I found myself smiling back. "I guess I'll see you tomorrow, Pequeña," I whispered. Outside, I heard car doors slamming, an engine starting. Through the window, I watched a black SUV with tinted windows pull away from the house, flanked by 2 more identical vehicles. I'd been invisible in this house for 2 months. Something told me I'd never be invisible again. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, that sharp jaw, those dark eyes that had looked at me like I was something to be studied, categorized, possessed. Things that are valuable to me, I protect them very carefully. The words circled through my mind on an endless loop, and I couldn't decide if they were a promise or a prison sentence. At 2:47 a.m., I sat up in bed, my thin sheets tangled around my legs, and stared at the card on my nightstand. In the darkness, the silver lettering seemed to glow. I'd memorized every detail, the weight of the cardstock, too expensive for something so simple. The phone number with no name attached, the handwriting on the back, those sharp, decisive strokes that looked like they'd been carved rather than written. My apartment was smaller than Valentina's bedroom. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen, with a bathroom so tiny I had to turn sideways to close the door. The heating barely worked, and my neighbor's baby cried through the walls at all hours, but it was mine. I'd fought for it, scraped together deposits and references, worked 3 jobs to keep it. Now, lying in the dark, I wondered if I'd just traded my invisibility for something far more dangerous. At 5:30 a.m., I gave up on sleep and showered in lukewarm water, watching the sky lighten through my single window. Friday. Just another day. Except it wasn't, and we both knew it. I dressed in my usual uniform, black pants, white button-down shirt, comfortable shoes, but my hands fumbled with the buttons, and I had to redo my hair 3 times before the bun sat neatly at the nape of my neck. In the cracked mirror above my sink, I looked pale, shadows under my eyes that makeup couldn't hide. "You're being ridiculous," I told my reflection. "He's just a man. You're just dancing with his daughter. Nothing has to change." But everything had already changed, and I'd felt it the moment his eyes had landed on me. The bus ride to the Salvatore estate took an hour and 15 minutes. 2 transfers through parts of the city that shifted from gray to grayer. I pressed my forehead against the window and watched the world scroll past. Convenience stores with bars on the windows, apartment buildings with laundry strung between balconies, eventually giving way to wider streets, taller trees, houses that sat behind gates and walls. By the time I reached the mansion, my stomach was a knot of anxiety. Mrs. Chen was waiting for me in the kitchen, her face pinched with an expression I couldn't read. She was a small woman, probably in her 60s, who ran the household staff with military precision. I'd never seen her smile, never heard her raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her disapproval was palpable enough without volume. "Elena," she said, my name clipped and sharp. "I received a very interesting call this morning." I set down my bag, met her eyes. "Mrs. Chen, I can explain. Mr. Salvatore informed me that your duties have changed." She picked up a piece of paper from the counter, held it at arm's length like it might contaminate her. "You're to spend 2 hours every afternoon with Miss Valentina. Your cleaning responsibilities will be redistributed among the other girls." Relief flooded through me, immediately followed by guilt. The other maids would have to pick up my slack, work harder, because I'd stumbled into something I didn't understand. "I didn't ask for this," I said quietly. "No, Mrs. Chen's gaze was shrewd, assessing. "You didn't. But you have it now, and let me tell you something, girl. In this house, there are rules. The first rule is that you don't draw attention to yourself. You've already broken that rule." She moved closer, and I caught the scent of the tea she always drank, something herbal and bitter. "Mr. Salvatore is not a kind man, Elena. He may seem calm, controlled, but underneath..." She shook her head. "You've been noticed now. That's not a gift. That's a target on your back. I just danced with his daughter," I whispered. "That's all. That's never all." Mrs. Chen turned away, began pulling ingredients from the refrigerator with sharp, precise movements. "Be in Miss Valentina's room at 3 o'clock. Don't be late. And Elena?" She paused, her back still to me. "Be very, very careful what you wish for in this house. Sometimes getting what you want is the worst thing that can happen to you." I spent the morning in a daze, going through the motions of cleaning rooms that didn't need cleaning, my mind elsewhere. The other maids gave me looks, some curious, some resentful. Maria, who'd been here longest, cornered me in the second-floor hallway around noon. "Is it true?" she asked, her accent thick with her native Portuguese. "You met him? The boss?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Deus," she breathed, crossing herself. "And you're still here? Still walking around?" "I didn't do anything wrong," I said, defensive. "I was just... It doesn't matter what you did or didn't do." Maria glanced over her shoulder, lowered her voice. "That man, he's not like other rich men. The things I've heard, Elena, the things that happen to people who cross him. I'm not crossing him. I'm helping his daughter. That's what worries me." She reached out, gripped my arm with surprising strength. His daughter is everything to him. Everything. If something happens to her, if she gets upset, if anything goes wrong. She didn't finish the sentence, just shook her head and walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway with my heart hammering against my ribs. At 2:45, I climbed the back stairs to the family wing, my legs heavy with each step. The house felt different today, more watchful, like the walls themselves were paying attention. I passed a man in a dark suit standing near a window, speaking quietly into a phone. He watched me go by with eyes that cataloged and assessed, and I knew without being told that he was one of Domenico's men, security, protection, or surveillance. Valentina's door was closed. I knocked softly, waited for permission that wouldn't come, then pushed it open. The room was exactly as I'd left it yesterday, but sunlight streamed through the windows now, making everything softer, less haunted. Valentina sat in her wheelchair near the window, positioned so she could see the gardens. She wore a different dress today, pale yellow, with white flowers embroidered along the collar. Someone had braided her dark hair, woven a ribbon through it. "Hi, pequeña," I said, stepping inside and closing the door behind me. "Remember me?" Her eyes found mine immediately, and I saw recognition there. No smile yet, but something close. Interest, maybe. Hope. I set down my bag and moved into her line of sight, crouching down so we were at eye level. "I brought something for you today." I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my carefully curated playlist. I thought maybe we could try different kinds of dancing, see what you like best. I pressed play, and salsa music filled the room, fast, rhythmic, alive with brass and percussion. I started moving, letting the music guide my hips, my shoulders, my feet. I narrated as I went, keeping my voice light and silly. This is how my mama danced when she was happy. She'd grab my hands and spin me around the kitchen until I was dizzy, I demonstrated, spinning with my arms out, nearly knocking over a lamp. Okay, maybe we need more space. That got me something. A tiny sound from Valentina's throat, almost like a laugh. Emboldened, I changed the song. Something slower this time, a ballad that my mother used to sing while washing dishes. I swayed gently, moving my arms in flowing motions, telling Valentina about my childhood, about the tiny apartment where music was the only luxury we could afford. I was mid-spin when I felt it, that prickling awareness, the sensation of being watched. I turned, and my breath caught. Domenico stood in the doorway, silent as a shadow. How long had he been there? His expression was unreadable, but his eyes... God. His eyes were intense, focused on me with an attention that made my skin heat. He wore another suit, charcoal gray this time, with a white shirt open at the collar. No tie. The casual detail somehow made him more dangerous, not less. Behind him, I could see two more men in the hallway, their presence a reminder that this man never moved through the world alone. "Don't stop," he said quietly. My mouth went dry. Mr. Salvatore, I didn't hear you. I said don't stop. Not a request. A command, delivered in that soft voice that somehow carried more weight than a shout. The music continued playing from my phone. I stood frozen, acutely aware of how I must look. Hair escaping from its bun, cheeks flushed, breathing hard from the dancing. My uniform was wrinkled where I'd been moving, and I felt suddenly, painfully conscious of my own body. "She likes watching you," Domenico said, moving into the room. His men stayed in the doorway, their backs to us, giving the illusion of privacy while maintaining their vigilant watch. "Valentina, when you dance, she focuses. She's present. Do you understand what that means?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. He moved to his daughter's wheelchair, placed a hand on her shoulder with such tenderness it made my chest ache. "Since the accident, she's been... distant, locked inside herself. The doctors say she's aware, that her mind is intact, but she can't express herself, can't move more than her eyes, can't speak, can't..." His voice roughened, and he stopped, took a breath. "But yesterday, when you danced, I saw her, really saw her. She was trying to smile." He looked up at me then, and the vulnerability in his face was so unexpected, so raw, that I took a step back. This wasn't the dangerous man from yesterday. This was a father, desperate and breaking, held together by sheer will. "Please," he said, and that single word carried more weight than any threat. "Dance for her again." So I did. I moved slowly at first, self-conscious with him watching, but gradually the music pulled me in. I danced the way my mother had taught me, with feeling, not technique, with joy instead of precision. I told stories with my body, narrated adventures about princesses and dragons, made exaggerated faces that pulled tiny reactions from Valentina. And all the while, I felt Domenico's gaze on me like a physical touch. When the song ended, I was breathless, my heart pounding. Valentina's eyes were bright, more alive than I'd seen them, and when I looked at Domenico, I found him staring at me with an expression that made my stomach flip. "What happened to her?" I asked, immediately regretting the question. "I'm sorry. That's not my place." "A car accident." His voice was flat, controlled, but underneath I heard the rage he kept leashed. 8 months ago, someone ran a red light, T-boned the car she was in with her mother. He paused, and when he continued, each word was carefully measured. Her mother died on impact. Valentina survived, but the damage to her spine. He stopped, his jaw working. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. The driver was drunk. He walked away with a broken arm. Domenico's hand tightened on Valentina's wheelchair, his knuckles going white. "He's not walking anymore." The implications of that statement hung in the air between us, heavy and dark. I should have been horrified, should have been afraid. But looking at this little girl, at her father's barely contained grief, I only felt a fierce, unexpected anger on their behalf. "She's lucky to have you," I said. Domenico's gaze snapped to mine, sharp and assessing. "She's all I have," he corrected. "Everything I do, every decision I make, is for her. To keep her safe. To give her the best care, the best life possible. Even if..." He stopped, looked away. "Even if that life looks different than I'd planned." He stood abruptly, smoothed down his suit jacket with precise movements. The vulnerability disappeared, replaced by that controlled mask I was beginning to recognize. "You'll come every day. 3 to 5. I'll have Carlos..." He gestured to one of the men in the doorway. "Drive you home after. It's not safe for you to take the bus at that hour." "That's not necessary." "It wasn't a request, Elena." He moved toward the door, then paused, turned back. "And I'm increasing your salary. Whatever Mrs. Chen is paying you, consider it tripled. Mr. Salvatore, I can't... You're not cleaning toilets anymore. You're caring for my daughter. That's worth more than whatever pittance you were earning." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "What's your bank account information?" "I don't understand why..." "Because you made her smile." He said it like that explained everything, like that simple act had fundamentally shifted something in his world. Because in 8 months, countless doctors, therapists, specialists, none of them could do what you did in 5 minutes. Because you're valuable to me now, Elena, and I take care of what's valuable to me. There it was again. That phrase that sounded like protection, but felt like possession. "I need to know you're safe," he continued, his voice dropping lower. "I need to know you're fed, rested, able to be here for Valentina without worrying about rent or bus fare or whatever other concerns occupy women in your position." "Women in my position," I repeated, bristling at the casual dismissal. "You mean poor women?" His eyes flashed with something, surprise maybe, that I'd pushed back. "I mean women who work themselves to exhaustion for barely enough to survive. Don't be offended by facts, Elena. I'm offering you a better situation. Take it." "And if I don't want to?" The air in the room changed, thickened. Domenico took a step toward me, and despite every instinct screaming at me to retreat, I held my ground. "Then you'd be very foolish," he said softly. "Because this isn't just about money, this is about protection. Do you know what happens when people notice you're important to someone like me? When they see you entering my home every day, leaving in my cars?" I shook my head, my mouth dry. "You become a target." He moved closer, and I could smell that scent again. Expensive cologne, smoke, power. Anyone who wants to hurt me, to get to me, they'll look for weaknesses. And Valentina is my weakness, which means anyone close to her. He let the sentence hang. Are you trying to scare me? My voice came out shakier than I'd intended. I'm trying to protect you. His hand came up, and I flinched, but he only reached past me to adjust the curtain behind my shoulder, letting in more light. His arm brushed against mine, and that brief contact sent electricity skittering across my skin. Whether you want it or not, Elena, you're under my protection now. That means Carlos drives you. That means you accept the salary increase. That means if anyone makes you uncomfortable, threatens you, even looks at you wrong, you call the number on that card I gave you. This is insane, I whispered. This is my world. He stepped back, and I could breathe again. And you walked into it the moment you decided to dance for my daughter. So the question isn't whether you want my protection. The question is whether you're smart enough to accept it. He moved to the door, his men straightening as he approached. At the threshold, he looked back one more time. Same time tomorrow, Elena, and... His gaze traveled over me, lingering in a way that made heat pool in my stomach. Wear something you can move in. If you're going to dance, you should be comfortable. Then he was gone, and I was left standing in a shaft of sunlight, my heart racing, my mind spinning with the realization that my life had just been reorganized without my permission. I looked at Valentina, who watched me with those knowing eyes. Your father is... I started, then stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. Controlling, protective, dangerous, all of the above. Valentina's mouth curved, just slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. And despite everything, despite the fear curling in my gut, despite Mrs. Chen's warnings, despite the fact that I'd just been claimed by a man who clearly didn't understand the word no, I found myself smiling back. Yeah, I whispered. I know. I'm in trouble, aren't I? Outside, I heard the SUVs starting, heard the heavy gates opening and closing. Through the window, I watched the convoy disappear down the long driveway. The room felt emptier without him in it, and that realization terrified me more than anything else that had happened. Carlos was waiting for me in the circular driveway when I emerged from the house at 5 o'clock, my legs still shaky from 2 hours of dancing. He stood beside a black Mercedes, identical to the SUVs I'd seen Domenico use, and when he saw me, he opened the back door without a word. I can take the bus, I said. Even though we both knew it was pointless. Carlos was maybe 50, with silver threading through his dark hair, and the kind of stillness that came from years of watching, waiting, protecting. He didn't smile, didn't argue, just gestured to the open door with a patience that suggested he could stand there all night if necessary. I got in. The interior smelled like leather, and something else, gun oil, maybe, or the particular scent of controlled violence. Carlos slid into the driver's seat, adjusted the rearview mirror until his eyes met mine, and said in accented English, "Address?" I gave it to him, watched his expression don't change even though I knew what he was thinking. My neighborhood wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't safe either. The kind of place where you kept your head down and your doors locked, where police sirens were background music. We drove in silence. Carlos took a route I didn't recognize, winding through parts of the city I'd never seen, and I realized he was checking for tails, for anyone following. The thought sent a chill down my spine. Has he always been like this? I asked, surprising myself. Mr. Salvatore, so, controlling? Carlos's eyes flicked to mine in the mirror. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, the boss protects what's his, always has. But since Miss Valentina's accident... He paused, choosing his words carefully. He's become more vigilant, can't blame him. He lost his wife, almost lost his daughter. Man like that, he doesn't take chances anymore. But I'm not his, I said quietly. I'm just someone who works for him. Carlos made a sound that might have been a laugh or a warning. You made his daughter smile, that makes you his. The words settled into my chest like stones. When we pulled up in front of my building, a 4-story walk-up with peeling paint and a broken intercom, Carlos got out first. He scanned the street with practiced efficiency, his hand resting near his hip in a way that suggested a weapon wasn't far. Only when he seemed satisfied did he open my door. 5th floor, he said, not a question. How did you... Boss asked. I found out. He pulled out a phone, typed something quickly. I'll be here tomorrow at 2:30 to pick you up. Don't leave before I arrive. I can get there myself. Miss Russo. He used my last name for the first time, his voice firm. "I have orders. The boss gave me 2 jobs. Keep you safe, and make sure you get to Miss Valentina. I take my job seriously, so please, don't make this difficult." I wanted to argue, to assert some kind of independence, but looking at Carlos's expression, professional, immovable, I understood this wasn't personal. This was business. I was a job now, something to be protected and transported, whether I liked it or not. "Fine," I said, 2:30. I climbed the 5 flights to my apartment, my thighs burning from the stairs and the dancing. Inside, I locked both deadbolts, slid the chain into place, and leaned against the door, finally allowing myself to process everything that had happened. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Your first payment has been deposited. Check your account, DS." My hands trembled as I opened my banking app. The number that appeared made me sit down hard on my bed. 3 months' salary, deposited in a single transfer from an account labeled only DS Holdings. I stared at it until the screen went dark, then called my landlord and paid 3 months' rent in advance for the first time in my life. That night, I dreamed of dark eyes and soft commands, of dancing in a gilded cage while someone watched from the shadows. The weekend passed in a blur of restless energy. I cleaned my apartment, really cleaned it, scrubbing corners that hadn't seen attention in months. I bought groceries without checking prices, filled my tiny refrigerator with fresh vegetables and real meat instead of whatever was cheapest. I even replaced my threadbare towels, standing in the store aisle feeling guilty and exhilarated in equal measure. Saturday night, my friend Sophia called, wanting to know why I'd been ignoring her texts. "I've been working," I said, which was true but incomplete. Working or hiding? Sophia had known me since high school, back when we'd both had dreams bigger than our circumstances. She'd made hers happen, put herself through nursing school, got a good job at the county hospital. Meanwhile, I'd gotten this. "You sound weird, Elena. What's going on?" I wanted to tell her. Wanted to explain about Valentina, about the dancing, about Domenico and his quiet commands and the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious and dangerous all at once. But how could I explain what I didn't understand myself? "Just a new position," I said finally. "Better pay, different responsibilities." "Different how?" "I'm caring for a little girl now, special needs. She's wonderful, Sophia. Smart and aware but trapped in her body. And when I dance for her, she lights up. It's like I'm giving her something no one else can." Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "This little girl, who's her father?" The question I'd been avoiding. Someone wealthy, someone important. "Elena." Sophia's voice sharpened with worry. "Please tell me you're not getting involved with some rich married man." "He's a widower, and I'm not involved with him. I'm helping his daughter, that's all." "That's never all. Men with money, men with power, they don't see women like us as people, Elena. We're conveniences, entertainment, and when they're done..." "It's not like that," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. After we hung up, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Sophia's words circling through my mind. Men with money, men with power. They don't see women like us as people. Was that what I was to Domenico? A convenience? A tool to reach his daughter? But I remembered the way he'd looked at me while I danced, the intensity in his gaze that had nothing to do with Valentina and everything to do with me, the way he'd said my name, Elena, like he was testing how it felt on his tongue. "You're valuable to me now." I told myself I was reading too much into it, projecting meaning onto simple words. He was protecting his daughter's caretaker, nothing more, but I'd seen the way his eyes had lingered on me, had felt the air change when he stepped close. I told myself I was being foolish. I didn't believe it. Monday came too quickly. Carlos was waiting outside my building at exactly 2:30, and this time when he opened the car door, there was a shopping bag on the back seat. "From the boss," Carlos said when he saw my questioning look. Inside the bag were dance clothes, leggings, comfortable tops, proper dance shoes in exactly my size. Expensive brands I'd never dreamed of owning. And at the bottom, a note in that same sharp handwriting. You should be comfortable. DS. I changed in Valentina's bathroom before our session, feeling strange in clothes that fit properly, that moved with my body instead of against it. When I emerged, Valentina's eyes widened slightly, her version of approval I was learning to recognize. Your father has opinions about everything, doesn't he? I asked her, smoothing down the soft fabric of my new top. Her mouth twitched, definitely amusement. I danced for her for 2 hours, trying new styles, new songs, narrating stories about faraway places and impossible adventures, and slowly, incrementally, I saw changes. A finger that moved, just barely, just a millimeter, but moved. An expression that lasted longer, grew stronger. You're getting stronger, I told her, crouching down to meet her eyes. I can see it, Pequeña. Your body is fighting its way back to you. I didn't know if it was true, if dancing could somehow help heal neurological damage, but I wanted to believe it, needed to believe that I was giving her something real, not just distraction. At 5 o'clock, when Carlos knocked to announce it was time to leave, I gathered my things slowly, reluctant to go. Valentina watched me with those knowing eyes, and I could have sworn she looked disappointed. Tomorrow, I promised, kissing the top of her head the way I'd seen Domenico do. Same time. I'll teach you about flamenco. My grandmother was Spanish, and she said flamenco wasn't dancing. It was passion made visible. I was halfway down the back stairs when I heard voices. Male, angry, speaking rapid Italian. I froze, recognizing one of them. Domenico. Don't care what the Calabrese family thinks they're owed. They touch my shipments again and I'll... Another voice, calmer, cautioning. Then footsteps approaching. I should have kept moving. Should have made myself scarce like Mrs. Chen had taught me. Instead, I pressed against the wall, holding my breath as 2 men rounded the corner. Domenico saw me instantly, his eyes narrowed, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, followed by calculation. The man beside him, older, with scars marking his weathered face, stopped talking mid-sentence. Elena. Domenico's voice was carefully neutral. Carlos is waiting for you. I know, I gestured helplessly up the stairs. He moved toward me, and the scarred man fell back, giving us space. When Domenico stood close enough that I could count his eyelashes, smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body, he said quietly, "How is she today?" "Better. Stronger, I think." She moved her finger, just a little, but his hand came up, cupped my chin, tilted my face up toward the light. The touch was gentle, clinical almost, but my breath caught anyway. "You're exhausted," he observed. "You've been dancing for 2 hours straight. Are you eating enough? Sleeping?" "I'm fine," I managed. "That's not what I asked." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I realized with embarrassment that I was trembling. "Carlos said you live alone. 5th floor walk-up. No elevator." "It's affordable," I said defensively. "It's unacceptable." He dropped his hand but didn't step back. "You can't care for Valentina if you're running yourself into the ground. I'm having my people look for something better. Closer to here, ground floor, better security." "No." The word came out sharper than I'd intended. "Mr. Salvatore, I appreciate everything you've done, but you can't just reorganize my entire life. I have an apartment. It's mine. I chose it." His jaw tightened. "Your apartment is in a neighborhood with 3 times the city's average crime rate. Last month alone, there were 2 muggings within a block of your building." "How do you know that?" "Because I make it my business to know everything about the people who matter to me." He said it like it was reasonable, like surveillance was a normal expression of concern. "You matter to me, Elena, because you matter to Valentina. Which means your safety is my responsibility. I'm not your responsibility. I'm an employee. You're more than that." The words hung between us, weighted with implications I wasn't ready to examine, whether you accept it or not. The scarred man cleared his throat. "Boss, we need to go. The meeting can wait." Domenico's eyes never left mine. "Elena, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to keep you alive. Do you understand the difference?" "Honestly, no, because from where I'm standing, they look the same." Something that might have been respect flashed across his face. You're braver than I thought, or more foolish. I haven't decided which. Maybe both, I said. He smiled then, a real smile, brief and devastating, transforming his face from handsome to breathtaking. Maybe both, he agreed. Then, all business again. We'll discuss the apartment situation later. For now, go home, rest, eat something. Carlos will pick you up tomorrow. He stepped back, and I could breathe again. But as I moved past him toward the stairs, his hand caught my wrist. Not hard, not painful, just enough to stop me. Elena. His voice was low, meant only for me. Thank you. For what you're doing for her. For... He paused, seemed to struggle with words. For seeing her. Really seeing her, when so many others just see broken. My throat tightened. She's not broken, she's just... finding her way back. His grip on my wrist tightened fractionally, then released. Go. Before I think of more reasons to keep you here. I fled down the stairs, my heart hammering, his words echoing in my head. Before I think of more reasons to keep you here. In the car, Carlos glanced at me in the rearview mirror. You okay, Miss Russo? I don't know, I admitted. Carlos, is he always like this? So... intense? Carlos supplied. Possessive? Controlling? He nodded. With things that matter to him, yes. The boss doesn't do anything halfway. When he cares about something, he consumes it, protects it, owns it. I'm not a thing to be owned. No, Carlos agreed. But try telling him that. We drove through the darkening city, and I watched the lights blur past, thinking about possession and protection, about the fine line between the two. Thinking about a man who smiled like sunshine breaking through storm clouds, who touched my face like I was made of glass, who cataloged my living situation like he was planning a hostile takeover. You're valuable to me now. The words should have flattered me, should have made me feel important, seen. Instead, they felt like a velvet collar tightening around my throat. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Valentina's almost smile. Saw the light in her eyes when I danced. For her, I could endure her father's overwhelming attention. For her, I could navigate the dangerous waters of Domenico Salvatore's protection. I just had to make sure I didn't drown in the process. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that became both comfortable and dangerous. Every afternoon at 2:30, Carlos appeared outside my building. Every afternoon from 3 to 5, I danced for Valentina, and every evening, Domenico found a reason to appear in her doorway, watching us with those dark, hungry eyes. The changes in Valentina were undeniable. Her finger movements had progressed to small hand gestures. She could turn her head slightly now, tracking my movements across the room. And twice, she'd made sounds that weren't quite words but were close, throaty attempts at communication that made my eyes sting with tears. But the changes in me were more troubling. I'd started looking forward to those moments when Domenico appeared, started choosing my dance outfits with more care, wondering if he'd notice, started staying a few minutes longer than necessary, hoping he'd arrive before I left. I was playing with fire, and I knew it. On a Thursday evening, 3.5 weeks after everything started, Domenico arrived earlier than usual. I was mid-dance, spinning to a fast-paced cumbia, laughing at my own clumsy footwork, when I caught sight of him in the doorway. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, tall, elegant, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She was beautiful in that calculated way some women achieved, all sharp cheekbones and perfect makeup, her blonde hair swept into an intricate updo. I stumbled, caught myself, stopped dancing. The music continued playing from my phone, inappropriately cheerful against the sudden tension. "Don't stop on my account," the woman said, her voice cool and appraising. She had an accent I couldn't place, somewhere European, refined. I was enjoying the show. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. I reached for my phone, paused the music. I was just finishing up. "Elena," Domenico said, his voice carrying a warning I didn't understand. "This is Katerina Volkov, an associate." Katerina's smile was all teeth. Associate. How diplomatic, Domenico. She moved into the room with the confidence of someone who belonged, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She barely glanced at Valentina before her attention fixed on me. "So you're the little dancer everyone's talking about." "I'm Elena," I said, straightening my spine, refusing to be intimidated. "I work with Valentina. Work with..." Katerina laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Is that what we're calling it?" She turned to Domenico, and something passed between them, a history, an understanding, a challenge. "You've always had interesting tastes, Caro, but I must admit this is unexpected. Katerina." The single word was a warning, sharp and absolute, but she ignored him, circling me slowly, assessing. "Tell me, little dancer, do you know who Domenico really is, what he does?" "That's enough." Domenico's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet I'd learned to recognize. "Does she know about the Bratva negotiations? About what happened to the last person who tried to get close to Valentina without proper clearance?" Katerina's eyes glittered with malice. "Or does she think you're just a concerned father, paying generously for childcare?" My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at Domenico, saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Genuine anger, barely contained. "Leave," he said to Katerina. "Now. I'm not finished." "Carlos." Domenico didn't raise his voice, but instantly, Carlos appeared in the doorway with 2 other men. "Ms. Volkov was just leaving. Please escort her out. And make sure she understands that her access to this house has been revoked." Katerina's expression twisted with fury. "You're making a mistake, Domenico. The Volkov family won't forget this disrespect. The Volkov family can take their concerns to Victor. I'm sure he'll be fascinated to hear how his daughter disrupted a session with my daughter's therapist." His voice was ice. "Get out of my house." For a moment, I thought she might argue. But Carlos stepped forward, and whatever she saw in his expression made her reconsider. She turned on her heel and stalked toward the door, pausing only to look back at me. "Enjoy it while it lasts, little dancer," she said. "Men like Domenico don't keep their toys for long." Then she was gone, and the room felt like it could breathe again. I looked at Valentina first. She'd gone rigid in her wheelchair, her eyes wide with distress. I moved to her immediately, crouching down, taking her small hand in mine. "Hey, pequeña," I whispered. "It's okay. She's gone. Everything's okay." But Valentina's eyes weren't on me. They were on her father, watching him with an intensity that suggested she understood more than anyone gave her credit for. Domenico ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its perfect styling, the first time I'd seen him anything less than completely composed. "Elena, I apologize. That was..." "Who was she?" I interrupted. "Really?" He sighed, moved to the window, stared out at the gardens. "Katerina Volkov, daughter of Viktor Volkov, who controls most of the Russian operations in the city. We have business arrangements. Or we did, until recently." "And she knows Valentina? She's been here twice before, both times for meetings with her father. Both times she made Valentina uncomfortable." His hands curled into fists at his sides. "I should have banned her from the property after the first visit, but diplomacy required..." He stopped, shook his head. "It doesn't matter. She won't be back." I stood slowly, processing. Business arrangements, Russian operations. The casual way he spoke about banning people from his property, about family tensions that sounded more like mob politics than normal disagreements. "What you do," I said carefully. "Your business. It's not legal, is it?" Domenico turned from the window, and the look he gave me was assessing, calculating, deciding how much truth I could handle. "No," he said finally. "It's not." The confirmation should have terrified me. Should have sent me running for the door, calling for Carlos to take me home and never come back. But looking at him, at the tension in his shoulders, the protective way he positioned himself between me and the door, the softness in his eyes when he glanced at his daughter, I found I wasn't surprised. I'd known, on some level. The security, the careful routes Carlos took, the way people deferred to him with fear rather than respect. The conversations I'd overheard in Italian, the late-night meetings, the way he moved through the world like someone who made his own rules. "Does it change things?" he asked quietly. "Knowing?" I looked at Valentina, who watched us both with those intelligent eyes. Does it change why I'm here? Why she needs me? No. Then no, I said. It doesn't change things. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or relief. He moved toward me, and I held my ground even though every instinct screamed at me to retreat. He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. You're either very brave or very stupid, he said, echoing his words from weeks ago. Probably both, I answered, echoing mine. His hand came up, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was gentle, almost tender, but his eyes were fierce. Katerina was right about one thing. People talk about you. In my circles, people have noticed that I have someone new in my home, someone who matters to Valentina. That makes you visible, Elena, and visibility in my world is dangerous. You keep saying that, keep warning me, but you also keep pulling me deeper in. I know. His thumb traced the line of my jaw, and I shivered despite myself. I'm a selfish man, Elena. I see something I want, something that helps my daughter, and I take it. Protect it. Keep it. His voice dropped lower. I should let you go, should send you away before someone tries to use you against me. But I can't. Every time I try to think about Valentina without you, about this house without you dancing in it. He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. I'm not a thing to be kept, I whispered. No. You're a woman who makes my daughter smile, who moves like fire and looks at me like I'm not a monster. His hand slid to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. You're the first thing in 8 months that's made me feel something other than rage and grief, and that terrifies me more than any threat the Volkov family could make. My breath caught. Mr. Salvatore, Domenico, he corrected. When we're alone, you call me Domenico. Domenico, I tried, his name strange and intimate on my tongue. We shouldn't, I know. But he didn't step back. If anything, he moved closer, until I could feel the heat of his body, smell his cologne mixed with something else, coffee maybe, and the faint metallic tang of stress. Tell me to stop, Elena. Tell me this crosses a line and I'll step back. I'll keep our relationship professional. But you have to say it. You have to mean it. I should have said it. Should have established boundaries, protected myself, remembered Sophia's warnings about powerful men who saw women like me as conveniences. But standing there, with his hand in my hair, and his eyes dark with want, with Valentina watching us like she was rooting for something she couldn't express, I couldn't find the words. I don't know what this is, I said instead. I don't know what you want from me. Everything. The word was raw, honest. I want everything, Elena. Your time, your attention, your safety in my hands. I want you here every day, dancing for my daughter. I want to know you're protected, cared for, that nothing and no one can hurt you. His jaw clenched. I want things I have no right to want from someone like you, someone like me, I repeated. You mean someone poor? Someone beneath you? Someone good? The correction was fierce. Someone who hasn't been corrupted by my world, who still dances like joy is possible, who looks at my broken daughter and sees wholeness. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and my knees went weak. You're everything I'm not, Elena. Everything I can't afford to want, and I want you anyway. A sound from across the room broke the moment. Valentina, making one of those throaty, almost words. We both turned to look at her, and her eyes were bright, her mouth curved in something that was unmistakably a smile. She was happy. Seeing us together made her happy. Domenico saw it too. His hand dropped from my neck, but he didn't move away. She likes you, he said softly. More than likes you. You're bringing her back to us, piece by piece. How can I let that go? How can I risk losing that for her? So this is about Valentina? I asked, needing to understand. You want me close because of what I do for her? It started that way. His eyes met mine, honest and dangerous. It's not anymore. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened. I have to go. There's a situation that requires my attention." He looked at me, and something in his gaze made my stomach flip. "Carlos will take you home. Tomorrow we need to talk, really talk about what happens next. About how to keep you safe he gestured between us, while you're in my life. Don't." He cut me off gently. "Don't diminish what you are, not to me." He moved to Valentina, pressed a kiss to her forehead, murmured something in Italian, then he was gone, leaving me standing in the middle of the room with my heart racing and my mind spinning. Valentina made another sound, and when I looked at her, her expression was knowing, almost smug. "Don't look at me like that," I told her, but I was smiling. "Your father is impossible." Her smile widened fractionally. She knew. She'd always known, probably from that first day when he'd watched me dance. She'd seen what I'd been too blind or too scared to acknowledge. Domenico Salvatore wanted me, not just as his daughter's caretaker, not just as an employee. He wanted me in a way that was possessive and protective and probably unhealthy, in a way that would complicate everything and put me in danger, and God help me. Part of me wanted him too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, reliving every moment of the evening. The way he'd touched me, the way he'd said everything like it was a confession and a claim all at once. At 2 a.m. my phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I knew who it was before I opened the message. "I can't stop thinking about you dancing, about the way you looked at me tonight. This is dangerous for both of us, Elena. But I've never been good at denying myself what I want. Sleep well. Tomorrow, everything changes." I read it 5 times, my thumb hovering over the reply button. What could I say? That I was thinking about him too? That I could still feel the ghost of his hand in my hair? That I was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure? In the end, I didn't reply. I just lay there in the darkness, clutching my phone, wondering what tomorrow would bring, wondering if I was brave enough or foolish enough to find out. Outside my window, I heard a car engine idling. I got up, peeked through the curtains, and saw a black SUV parked on the street. One of Domenico's men, watching my building, protecting me, or making sure I couldn't run, maybe both. I closed the curtains and climbed back into bed. And this time when I closed my eyes, I didn't fight the dreams that came. Dreams of dancing in the dark while someone watched. Dreams of hands that held too tight and voices that promised things they shouldn't. Dreams of a little girl smiling and a dangerous man who'd decided I belonged to him. And the terrifying thing was, part of me wanted to belong. Carlos arrived at 2:30 the next day, but instead of taking me to the mansion, he drove to a restaurant I'd never heard of, the kind of place with no sign on the door, just a discreet number on a brick facade in a neighborhood where everything cost more than I made in a month. "The boss wants to meet you here first," Carlos explained when he saw my confusion. "Private dining room. He has something to discuss." My stomach twisted with nerves. "Tomorrow, everything changes," he'd written. I'd spent the entire morning alternating between anticipation and dread, changing my outfit 4 times before settling on a simple dress. Nothing fancy, but nicer than my usual clothes. I'd left my hair down, applied a touch of makeup, told myself it didn't matter, even as I knew it did. Carlos escorted me through a kitchen where chefs worked in silent efficiency, down a hallway lined with expensive art, to a door at the very back. He knocked once, then opened it for me. "I'll be right outside," he said, something almost like sympathy in his eyes. The room was small, intimate, a single table set for 2, candles flickering even though it was mid-afternoon, windows overlooking a private garden. And standing by those windows, his back to me, was Domenico. He'd shed his suit jacket, wore only dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. He didn't turn when I entered, just spoke to the glass. "Close the door, Elena." I did, my heart hammering. The click of the latch felt final, like sealing myself into something I couldn't escape. "You're afraid of me," he said, still not turning. "I can tell. The way you hesitate before entering a room I'm in. The way your pulse jumps when I stand too close." Now he turned, and his eyes were dark, intense. "I need you to understand something. I would never hurt you. Never. But I can't promise the same for everyone else in my world. He moved to the table, pulled out a chair. Sit. Please. We need to talk, and I need you to really hear what I'm saying. I sat, my hands clasped in my lap to hide their trembling. He took the seat across from me, leaned back, studied me with that assessing gaze I'd come to recognize. 3 weeks ago, you walked into my daughter's room and changed everything. He began, not just for Valentina, but for me. For the first time in 8 months, I felt something other than rage and grief. I saw someone look at my daughter with joy instead of pity. I watched you dance like the world wasn't heavy, and I realized how much I'd forgotten what lightness looked like. He paused, poured wine into 2 glasses with steady hands. I told myself it was just about Valentina, that my interest in you was purely practical. You helped her, so I needed to protect you. But I'm not a man who lies to himself, Elena. Not about things that matter. What are you saying? My voice came out barely above a whisper. I'm saying I want you, not just as Valentina's caretaker, not just as someone who makes my daughter smile. I want you in my life, in my home, in my bed. He said it plainly, without artifice. I want to take care of you, protect you, give you everything you've never had, and I want your time, your attention, your presence beside me. My breath caught. You're asking me to be your, what? Girlfriend? Mistress? I'm asking you to be mine. He leaned forward, and the candlelight caught the sharp planes of his face. In whatever way you'll have me, I know what I am, Elena. I know what I do. I've built an empire on violence and fear, and I won't apologize for it. But with you... He stopped, seemed to struggle for words. With you, I want to be something else. Someone who deserves the way you look at me. And if I say no... Pain flashed across his face. Then you say no. I won't force you, won't coerce you. You'll still have your position with Valentina, still have the same salary, the same protection. But I need to know, Elena. I need to know if there's any possibility that you feel even a fraction of what I feel when I look at you. I should have said no. Should have drawn clear boundaries, protected myself from the inevitable complications. But sitting there, with his eyes on mine and his confession hanging in the air between us, I couldn't lie. I think about you, I admitted, my voice shaking. When I'm home, when I'm dancing for Valentina, when I'm trying to sleep, I think about the way you look at me, the way you touched my face, the way you said my name like it meant something. And it terrifies me, Domenico, because men like you don't want women like me. Not really. Not for keeps. You're wrong. He reached across the table, took my hand in his. His palm was warm, calloused in unexpected places. I've had women who wanted my money, my power, my name. Beautiful women, accomplished women, women from families as powerful as mine. And I felt nothing. Nothing, Elena. But you walk into a room and I can't breathe. You dance and I forget everything else exists. You smile at my daughter and I want to give you the world just to see if you'll smile at me the same way. This is crazy, I whispered. We barely know each other. I know you work yourself to exhaustion because you're terrified of being poor again. I know you dance like your mother taught you, with feeling instead of technique. I know you see beauty in broken things, possibility where others see only loss. I know you're brave enough to push back when I'm being unreasonable and kind enough to forgive me when I overstep. His grip on my hand tightened. I know enough, Elena. The question is whether you know enough about me to take this risk. I know you're dangerous, I said. I know you do things that are illegal, probably immoral. I know people fear you, that you have enemies who would use me against you. I know you're controlling and possessive and you don't understand the word no. And? His eyes searched mine. And I know you love your daughter more than anything in the world. I know you grieve your wife even while you're offering yourself to me. I know you're capable of gentleness even though you've built your life on violence. I know you see me, really see me, in a way no one else ever has. Something in his expression cracked open. Then take the risk. Be with me. Let me show you what it's like to be cherished, protected, wanted for exactly who you are. What happens when you get bored? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. When the novelty wears off and you realize I'm just a girl who cleans houses and dances badly, what happens to me then? He stood abruptly, moved around the table, pulled me to my feet. His hands framed my face, tilting it up to meet his eyes, and the intensity there stole my breath. I don't get bored with things that matter, he said fiercely. I don't discard what's valuable. And you, Elena Russo, are the most valuable thing that's walked into my life since my daughter was born. So no, I won't get bored. I won't tire of you. If anything, I'll become more obsessed, more possessive, more determined to keep you close. His thumb brushed across my lips. The question isn't whether I'll stay interested. The question is whether you can handle how much I want you. Then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. Wasn't the careful, considerate first kiss of someone testing waters. It was consuming, possessive, a claim and a promise and a demand all at once. His hands tangled in my hair, angled my head for better access, and I melted against him, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even as some rational part of my brain screamed warnings. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His eyes were nearly black, his control clearly fraying. Say yes, he demanded, his voice rough. Say you'll try this. Give me a chance to prove I can be what you need. This is insane, I breathed. Everything about this is insane. I know. He pressed his forehead to mine. Say yes anyway. And God help me, I did. Yes. The next 3 months were a blur of stolen moments and careful navigation. Domenico kept our relationship private. Not secret exactly, but contained. Around Valentina, we were professional, appropriate. But in stolen hours, in that private dining room or in his office after hours, he showed me a side of himself I suspected few people ever saw. He was attentive to the point of obsession, learning everything about me. My favorite foods, my childhood dreams, the way I liked my coffee. He replaced my entire wardrobe without asking permission, filled my apartment with flowers every week, had Carlos drive me everywhere even when I protested. He was also suffocating. He wanted to know where I was every moment, who I spoke to, what I was doing. His protection felt more like surveillance, his care more like control. We fought about it. Heated arguments where I accused him of treating me like property, and he accused me of not understanding the dangers I faced. But we always came back together, because underneath the possession and the control, there was something real, something that grew stronger every day. And Valentina, she blossomed. 6 months after I'd first danced for her, she could move her arms, turn her head freely, make sounds that were almost words. The doctors called it miraculous. Domenico called it Elena, but perfection never lasts, not in worlds built on violence. It was a Tuesday when everything shattered. I was dancing for Valentina, laughing at my own clumsy attempt at ballet, when Carlos burst through the door, no knock, no warning. His face grim. We need to go. Now. What's happening? I asked, but he was already moving to Valentina, releasing the brake on her wheelchair. Volkov made his move. The boss is handling it, but he wants you and Valentina in the safe house until it's resolved. Fear iced through my veins. Is he okay? Is Domenico? He's fine. But he won't stay fine if he's worried about you two. Please, Miss Russo, we need to move. The next 6 hours were a nightmare of unfamiliar rooms and armed guards, of watching Valentina's fear and not being able to explain what was happening. Carlos stayed with us, his phone constantly buzzing with updates he wouldn't share. Finally, at nearly midnight, Domenico arrived. He looked like violence barely contained. Blood on his knuckles, his shirt torn, something dark and dangerous in his eyes. But when he saw us, saw Valentina safe in her wheelchair, and me standing beside her, his expression crumbled. He went to his daughter first, dropped to his knees in front of her wheelchair, pressed his face to her lap. Piccola, he breathed. Mi dispiace. I'm so sorry. I never should have let you be at risk. Then he looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my chest ache. Are you hurt? Did anyone touch you? I shook my head, moved to him, laid my hand on his shoulder. We're fine. Carlos kept us safe, but Domenico, what happened? Volkov tried to take one of my shipments. When that failed, he tried to take something more valuable. His jaw clenched. He sent men here, to the house. For you and Valentina. The blood drained from my face, but we weren't. Carlos got us out before, because I had extra security watching. Because I'm paranoid and controlling, and I plan for worst-case scenarios. He stood, pulled me against him hard enough to hurt. Because I knew someone would eventually try to use you against me, and I'd rather smother you with protection than lose you. I held him, felt him trembling against me. This powerful, dangerous man who'd just fought off a rival family, shaking because we might have been hurt. "It's over," he said after a long moment. "Volkov won't be a problem anymore. None of them will. I've made sure of that. I didn't ask what he'd done, didn't want to know the details of the violence he'd enacted to keep us safe. I just held him and let him hold me, while Valentina watched us with those knowing eyes. 2 weeks later, Domenico asked me to move into the mansion. Not requested. Asked, a distinction he was learning to make. "I can't protect you if you're across the city," he argued. "And Valentina needs you close. We both do." I should have refused. Should have maintained some independence. Some piece of my life that was just mine. But looking at him, at the dark circles under his eyes from sleepless nights, at the way he couldn't seem to stop touching me like he needed constant confirmation I was real, I couldn't. "Ground floor," I negotiated. "My own space. I'm not just moving into your bedroom like some kept woman." "Guest suite," he countered. "Private entrance, full kitchen, but connected to the main house, and security cameras covering every approach." We compromised. I moved in with more autonomy than he wanted to give, and more protection than I wanted to accept. It should have felt like a cage. Instead, it felt like coming home. 1 year after I'd first danced for Valentina, Domenico threw her a party. She could walk now. Halting, uncertain steps, but steps nonetheless. She could say a handful of words, her favorite being Papa and Elena. The doctor said her progress was unprecedented, that whatever therapy I was providing was working miracles. I knew it wasn't miracles, it was love, pure and simple. Love expressed through dance, through time, through presence. At the party, surrounded by Domenico's family and associates, I watched Valentina take 3 unassisted steps across the room to reach me. She collapsed into my arms, laughing. Actually laughing, a sound I'd never thought I'd hear, and buried her face in my shoulder. "Love you," she whispered. The words imperfect but unmistakable. My eyes filled with tears. "I love you too, Pequeña." When I looked up, Domenico was watching us, and the expression on his face was unguarded, raw. In front of everyone, he crossed to us, pulled us both into his arms, pressed his lips to my temple. "Marry me," he said, not asking, not demanding, just stating it like a fact he'd already decided. I should have been angry at the presumption. Instead, I laughed. "Is that a proposal or a command?" "It's whatever you need it to be." His arms tightened around us. "I'm asking you to be my wife, Elena. To be Valentina's mother in all the ways that matter. To build a life with me, messy and complicated and probably dangerous, but ours." I looked at Valentina, who watched us with hopeful eyes. Looked around at the people who'd become my family. Carlos, who smiled approvingly from across the room. Mrs. Chen, who actually looked pleased. The guards who'd protected me and teased me and made me feel safe. I looked at Domenico, this impossible, controlling, dangerous man who'd somehow become my everything. "Yes," I said, "but I'm keeping my last name." He laughed, the sound full and genuine. "You can keep whatever you want, Tesoro, as long as you keep me." "Deal," I whispered, and kissed him while Valentina giggled between us, and the room erupted in applause. 6 months later, I stood in a private chapel wearing a dress that cost more than my childhood home, with Valentina as my flower girl and Carlos walking me down the aisle because my own father had died years ago. I married Domenico Salvatore, surrounded by men who'd killed for him and family who'd die for him. And I wasn't afraid. Because I'd learned something in the 2 years since I'd stumbled into his life. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is exactly the right thing. Sometimes love isn't safe or comfortable or rational. Sometimes it's possessive and overwhelming and absolutely terrifying, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. That night, in our bedroom, not his bedroom but ours, Domenico held me close and whispered, "I knew from the first moment I saw you dancing. I knew you'd be mine. Arrogant," I teased, running my fingers through his hair. "Accurate," he corrected. "You were always meant to be here, Elena. With me, with Valentina. Home." And looking around at the life we'd built. Messy, complicated, probably still dangerous, but filled with more love than I'd ever dreamed possible. I couldn't argue. I'd walked into his world afraid and invisible, a ghost cleaning houses for people who never saw me. I'd left it as Elena Salvatore, wife to a dangerous man, mother to a miraculous girl, and the woman who'd learned that sometimes being seen, being wanted, being possessed by the right person, was the greatest freedom of all. Valentina had her father, whole and present in ways he hadn't been since losing his wife. Domenico had his daughter back, walking and talking and laughing again. And I had them both, my impossible, beautiful family. The world outside might be dark, violent, unforgiving. But inside these walls, surrounded by love and protection and the fierce devotion of a man who'd claimed me as his, I'd found something I'd never expected. I'd found home.